Okay, now we're going to actually go into talking about the seventh trumpet. All right, so for the most part, we've been covering different trumpets and everything throughout the past couple of weeks, the seals and everything. So now this is the very last trumpet, or what we would call the very last partial judgment. All right. For the most part, the seventh seal actually represents something significant. And in this particular presentation, I'm going to go ahead and actually explore that with you and actually come away and let you know, for the most part, what this particular trumpet really symbolizes and what it means for those who are believers and unbelievers. All right. So for the most part, right at when the point where the seventh trumpet was blown, now we have to also know too, the seventh trumpet is also known, or when the seventh trumpet sounds, it's going to bring forth as what we would call the third terror. Remember that we said the 5th, 6th, and 7th trumpet is going to represent the terror judgments, okay, for the most part. So for when this particular trumpet is blown, this is going to represent what we would call the third terror. So for the most part, when John was still sitting back viewing this, he said that he had saw the seventh angel blow the trumpet, and he said after that happened, he said that he heard like a loud voice. And for the most part, the world, as we know it, is getting ready to I guess, get prepared for the second coming of, Jesus, which of course is referred to in the book of Revelation as the King. What we have to understand here is that the seventh trumpet again represents, it represents something that was very significant, okay, for the most part. And what I said is that, remember now, what I'm saying here is that the seventh trumpet, again, not only is it actually a representation that Christ is getting ready to return shortly, it's also that God himself is getting ready to release his full wrath. What we also have to understand in this particular presentation is that the seventh trumpet also is representation that all of the partial judgment is getting ready to end. Everything now is going to be complete and full. All right, for the most part. And what we have to understand is that this is getting ready to be where, we're getting ready to really see some eye-opening events. Not that we haven't actually seen what was going to go on, at this point, but we're actually getting ready to see some real eye-opening events, because now God is getting ready to release his full fury, okay, or his wrath. And he's going to do that, and what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be exploring in the next couple of weeks, which is going to be the bowls of God's wrath. I think there are 7 bowls of his wrath. All right, but we also have to understand is that even though this is going to be representation of God releasing his full wrath on, the earth or the unbelievers and such, we also got to understand that this is going to actually be a fight between the concepts of what we would say is good and evil. Okay, what we got to understand here is that when this trumpet is blown, it's going to symbolize here that God himself is going to let people see Satan for who and what he really is. All right. What we got to understand is that there's going to be a lot of, war going on for the most part, and in a sense, it's going to be more on the level where we would say where it's between, righteousness and unrighteousness, God and Satan, however you want to look at it. This is again also what the seventh trumpet is going to represent: the struggle to really try to silence, to try to blind folks from the truth, and all of this is going to be done, and it's like the game is going to be stepped up where, because the enemy, you already know, is that he doesn't want to lose anyone that he thinks he has. And we know that all souls belong to God. So what we're going to see here is that the enemy is going to really try to step up his game to really keep, people blinded to the fact of what and who God really is. It's not that different from what we're seeing today. It's like every day we get up, we have a choice on who we're going to serve, who we're going to, trust, that sort of thing. But all too often these days, we're still, giving the enemy the upper hand. We're still yielding to the flesh. We're still wanting to do our own thing, all because of what we would call the freedom of choice. So now, it's getting now to the point where there's going to be like a battle in a sense going on, and pretty much for the most part, that's what this seventh trumpet represents. Aside from the fact that this is going to signify the or the return, soon to return, second coming of Christ. So again, as we see here that John, he sit there, he said that when that seventh trumpet was blown, he saw the 24 elders. They were actually standing up, sitting at the throne of God, and he said that they fell to their faces. And for the most part, what we got to understand is that what they chant is pretty much what's getting ready to happen. And if you notice, they were saying there that, they give thanks to God, the one who is and always was, and for now that, have assumed your great power, and have begun to reign. So, the nations were angry with you, but now the time of your wrath has come. It is time to judge the dead and reward your servants. Okay, you will reward your prophets and your holy people, and you will fear your name for the least of the greatest, and you will destroy all who have caused destruction to the earth. So now here we go again. We're getting ready to see now. He's getting ready to come in and now kind of, in a sense, put the finishing touches, if you will, on those partial judgments. Because again, with the seventh trumpet blown, there is no more partial judgments. It's going to be full fury, full force, all day, every day, whatever the case may be. All right. Now, what we have to understand is that shortly after this event happened here, John actually, was had witnessed a kind of a significant event in heaven. And for the most part, it has a lot, again, to do with symbolism. And now, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But it was like a war between a woman and a dragon. Not only a woman, but a pregnant woman. All right? So what we have to understand here is that John, again, wanting us to be in the know for everything that he's seeing here, he wants us to actually see and actually be able to see what he sees. I mean, so now he's actually being very vivid in what he's saying here, okay? For the most part, he says that, he saw a woman who was clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, and a crown of, 12 stars on her head. And again, as he stated, I said that she was pregnant, which she was, and she cried out in pain of labor as if she was awaiting delivery. So for the most part, something significant is going on. It's like, there's a story that's being told on how, what is going on as far as the enemy and how he's trying to silence, and trying to continue to blind those who really believe, or whatever the case may be. It's also a sense of how John is witnessing on how the enemy is trying to kill the Messiah, kill the promised one, kill the one who has actually come back to save the world. Because the enemy does not want the world to be saved. He does not want the people of the world to be saved. He wants them to continue to dwell in ignorance. But one thing about it is that an answer for the world is getting ready to come forth, and it's going to be given through the birth of this woman. She's getting ready to birth a king. You understand what I'm saying? And that person, that child that she's pregnant with, of course, is Jesus. All right? So for the most part, let's go ahead and talk about this. Again, here we go. Symbolism again. This is, the language of the book of Revelations, as stated previously. So again, yes, we said the representation, again, of the pregnant woman represents the saints of God who are awaiting the second coming. So again, she is like allegorical in a sense. She representing everybody who is saved, sanctified, and Holy Ghost filled, who are silently, or I would say patiently waiting for the second coming of Christ. All right, and all of this is being symbolized through John. That's why he's writing this. So now I'm trying to break it down for you so you can kind of understand what's going on. All right, those 12 crowns that I actually just mentioned to you, those are the 12 crowns that represents the 12 tribes of Israel, and we already know who they are. We've discussed that previously as well. Now, and again, as I stated before, the baby boy represents Jesus. He's the king. He's the Messiah. He's the one who is, who God is allowing to come forth to save the world. Okay? Now, again, we also know, too, that there's another being also that's there, too, that is awaiting the birth of the king as well. But he is not waiting for, in anticipation to actually, I guess, do the right thing or worship. He's actually waiting for this child to come forward so he can actually destroy and kill it. This is what this dragon is trying to do. And for the most part, we pretty much know that dragon actually represents Satan. All right? So we have to kind of keep this in mind now. We're starting to really get a little bit real in a sense right now. Okay? So again, the red dragon represents Satan. Now, we were told also now, as John was stating, and he, saw what was going on, he also said, too, even though he saw the pregnant woman, he said that he witnessed in heaven, another significant event, which he saw a large red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns with 7 crowns on his head. Okay, for the most part now, again, everything has a meaning. So we know that the red dragon is Satan. Okay, he has 7 heads and 10 horns, which means that he is in full, complete control of everything that's going on this earth in this day and time. People understand, when you read the Bible, the Bible says that Satan is the prince of the universe. He's the prince of the air, these type of things. We already know that we have system and governments that are everything that are in allegiance to Satan, and his beliefs, whether it be, throwing the Bible out of the schools, taking prayer out of schools, being proud, being selfish, being so greedy, all of these things is actually representations of this particular dragon, meaning that he has control over everything that's going on. Now, in this day and time, you don't really hear too many events or too many things that actually gives complete and total allegiance to Christ. Everything now is actually being centered and actually being, I guess, set up to worship the enemy. Okay, because one thing about it, God says that if you are not with him, you are against him. So pretty much there is no middle ground. You have a lot of people who say that they're what, atheists and everything. They don't believe in heaven or hell. For the most part, they're trying to put themselves in the middle. And I'm letting you know there is no middle ground, folks. When you're saying that, you don't worship one, you automatically are grouped in the other one. That's just the way that it goes, okay? And you'll have a lot of people that have those beliefs that say, you know what? You're wrong. Well, no, I'm not wrong. Read your Bible. Actually get understanding and get a relationship with Christ, but only you can do that. That's not something that I can convince you to do, because with some things, you have to let God have control. People can only do so much, but there are some things that God says you have to just step back and let me, handle. So with that, I'll leave that in that particular category. But again, those 7 crowns and 10 horns lets us know that Satan is in complete in full control of the events and everything that's happening in this day and time. It doesn't matter if you're the president all the way down to the poorest person on the streets. He is still in rule and trying to take over and trying to set up policies that will cause folks to, I guess, go over and begin to worship him. And in a sense, if you think about it, a lot of it is happening. You got a lot of people that are leaving the pulpits, as we stated before. They left the pulpit because they figured that they were not getting enough recognition. They figured that they weren't getting enough quote-unquote love. It's just the fact that they become so self-centered and selfish and narcissistic that they figured that, you know what, I can do better than this. And God is saying that once you're in his hand, don't leave, because there are so many things that are out there to tempt you. And once it gets you out there, once the enemy gets you out there through temptation, he leaves you out there for destruction, and he doesn't care if you survive. But one thing about it, he's going to do all that he can to keep you out there. So my advice to you is don't go out there in the first place. All right? And again, the third of the stars that followed him, for the most part, this is when Satan was actually kicked out of heaven because, he wanted to take over heaven. And when he was kicked out, that number, 1/3 again, a third of those stars that came with him, those became his imps, or his little demon helpers, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, those are his little imps a third of those stars, those a third of his followers. So those are, demons as well that, were kicked out and that are surrounding him as well. All right? So we have to really understand that and understand the concept, because the concept is really simple if you really kind of think outside the box and really kind of just get in deep study and really study this word to really get what's really going on. All right? So for the most part, we already know now what the pregnant lady with the crown, and that 7-headed dragon, we already know now that what they represent. So now what's going on is that this woman here, she is in a lot of pain. She's really trying to give birth, just like how a woman naturally gives birth, lots of pain, lots of yelling and everything like that. Okay, and for the most part, what's going on is that after she gives birth, okay, the enemy is really trying to destroy this baby, because he knows that if this baby is allowed to come forth and really do the work that he is really called to do, Satan won't have a chance. He will not have a stakehold in anybody's life. So his particular job, what he's trying to do, he's trying to prevent this birth. Once this birth happens, he can't stop the birth. But once it happens, he's wanting to destroy the baby. What happens is that it doesn't happen. The baby, once she has given birth, meaning that, it's already been established that the king, or that the second coming of Christ is going to happen, the baby is automatically caught up and gone to glory. All right? What we have to understand is that the baby, is automatically caught up where he does not have a chance, because the enemy already has his agenda. He wants to silence the word. He does not want anybody to know the word of God. So what he'll do is he'll try to destroy those, or try to manipulate those who are doing it, so everybody will be confused. You see what I'm saying? That's pretty much what he is. He's there to accuse. He's there to do all kinds of stuff to kind of keep us off of our track. So so when the woman, after she gave birth, and again, this baby was actually, again, to symbolize that he was going to rule all the nations, with an iron rod, and as the child was, was given birth or whatever, Satan wanted to get his hands on it, but for the most part, the baby was snatched away from God and pretty much caught up with God, in glory. Now, after this actually happened, and the enemy knows that he didn't have it, that he didn't have a chance of, I guess defeating or trying to, destroy the king. The lady actually, the young lady who we would actually think of as Mary, because she's the one who gave birth to Jesus, she actually immediately fled in the wilderness for the most part. And for the most part, the wilderness even has a meaning in itself, within itself as well. Okay, and for the most part, what we're saying here is that the Mary actually fled to a place where she can get spiritual protection from Satan's rule and attacks, meaning that she needs a place to rest, so she can regain her strength, so she can regain her composure. You see what I'm saying? What's going on here is that God is saying here that he's going to give his people spiritual protection from Satan's attacks. All right? He's already provided now. He's setting up things in place here so we can get ready to see and witness the second coming of Christ. And for those who are still going to be here to witness all this, he's giving us and letting us know that there is a place for you to rest in him, so you can regain that strength that you're going to need to carry on for what's about to happen. Okay, so again, the wilderness, as she runs to, is for the most part she's running to spiritual refuge where Satan can't get to her. Now he can get to the physical body to harm or whatever, but he can't touch that soul. And that's pretty much what Satan is that's what he's after. He's after that soul, and God says that you cannot touch that. Just like with Job, when God allowed that protective hedge to be removed from Job, he allowed the enemy to go in and attack him, and attacked his body, everything that was near and dear to him. But he said that you cannot have that soul. That soul belongs to me. You can attack everything else, but that soul you cannot have. And that's pretty much what the enemy is after. So that's where you see here this fight between good and evil. It's one person wanting to possess it, and the other person is saying it doesn't belong to you. You see what I'm saying? So now everything is kind of falling into place a little bit. Now again, now that Satan has lost that war or that battle, okay, now he's getting ready to lose another battle, because now what we're seeing here is that God has summoned now the war angel, as we know of as Michael. I think that's his name, Michael, to actually go in and run Satan out of heaven. Okay, for the most part. And for the most part, we're told in the book of Revelations again that, Michael and his angels, were under the command, and they were given a command to go in and fight Satan. And, and for the most part, we know the end result, because in, I think Revelations chapter 12, we're being told that he lost the battle, and he was actually forced out of heaven. So for the most part, this is when, again, it's like history is repeating itself. That's when we actually know and begin to learn who Satan is all over again, and how he became to be who he is. He's trying to take over. He's trying to fight and everything else. And for the most part, when you're and that serves a lesson too for those who keep constantly trying to fight against God. You're not gonna win. I don't care how much power you think you have, how much knowledge you think you have. You have a lot of people who are spiritual idiots, because they have no concept of what God is and who he is. And pretty much, and if you knew that, you would know that you were wasting your time. But I guess that Satan was so, ignorant to the fact that he figured that he could do it all on his own. And, God summoned that war angel, Michael, to come in, with his army and pretty much run him out. And that's what happened. And again, them and a third of, those imps, were ran out of heaven. And that's pretty much how we know Satan to be who he is at this particular point in time. So for the most part, this is where I'm going to actually stop this particular video here, so we can because I want to keep the seventh trumpet in a category on its own here, because there's going to be now a lot other more interesting issues that we're going to talk about in our next video here. We're going to be talking about, the beasts in the sea, that sort of thing that rose out of the sea, along with some other selected topics here, which is going to be, the subject of our next presentation. Okay, so again, I hope you enjoyed this short presentation, and again, I look forward to continued teaching of the book of Revelations. Stay tuned, folks. Be blessed.